Hi, I'm Michael P. Coleman, Content Director for Brother Be Well. Thanking you for checking out this Parents and Caregiver series brought to you by Blue Shield of California's Blue Sky Initiative. Hi, I'm Michael P. Coleman, Content Director for Brother Be Well. Human nature often drives us to focus on what's wrong rather than what's right. We ruminate sometimes on what has to be fixed and sometimes breeze right past the successes that we achieve along the way, always looking ahead to the next challenge. One of my mentors, Oprah Winfrey, says, the more you praise and celebrate your life, the more there is in life to celebrate. I think we can all agree with Miss Winfrey. Celebrating generally is a very good thing. Today, we're going to discuss the importance of short pauses to celebrate successes with ourselves and with those who are in our care, especially during our mental health journeys. We're having this conversation with a good buddy of mine, Mirela Giddings, Associate Marriage and Family Therapist at HearU.org. Mirela, how are you?
I'm doing good. I am very interested to talk about this topic.
Me too. I can't wait to get into it. It's not something we talk about a lot, so let's have some fun and get into this one if you don't mind.
Let's go.
First of all, let's touch on that human nature bit that I mentioned in the intro. Would you agree with the assessment that it's human nature to focus on what's wrong rather than what's right, instead of
I,
reflecting on successes and what's going well?
I would absolutely agree with that it is much easier to do that. And I've read a couple of different reasons for why that is, with one of them being it's like a very persistent evolutionary tactic for us in terms of survival. But I think the one that I lean more towards is that it is easier to criticize than it is to create. And what that means is that it's so easy to point out the flaws, what's currently difficult, what's not going right, because it's a win-win situation. If you think it'll go bad and it does go bad, then there's no real letdown. But if you think positive and it goes bad, well, shoot, like now you can feel worse. And it is much harder to create a positive from the situation, or even allow yourself to acknowledge those positives, big or small, during an overall difficult scenario. So that's why it's easier to celebrate grand wins where others are also celebrating with you than to do so daily on your own.
That's really interesting information. Before we go into my next question, I've got to ask you, what's the evolutionary thing? I didn't find that. So what's the evolutionary link to focusing on what's wrong?
So I read that, for instance, say there is like a tree that has the fruit that you want to eat, but you have a predator that is stalking you. You're in danger now, right? So you need to focus on the danger because you need to survive rather than focus on, but there's this food over there that can also help me survive, and that's a good thing.
Yeah.
Whereas you need to be focused on the overall, which is be cautious, stay alive, acknowledge that there's this negative thing happening that will keep you from getting to the positive.
Yeah, I get it. I never thought of it before, but I totally get that. So interesting to think of it that way. A number of studies that I found, and they've suggested that celebrating brings significant benefits, including improved physical health and better coping strategies. People who take the time to reflect on and celebrate their successes, these studies suggest, are generally more optimistic, they take better care of themselves, and they tend to be less stressed. All great things, right? Would you give us your take on that? Either agree or not. And if you agree, would you expound upon some of that for the Brother Be Well family?
Yeah, so I would agree with that. Celebrating success is a way to process how you got to that point, and it can be very validating for the self as well as a testament to your own fortitude and resilience. It also allows for a very good reflective process. So what did I do to get to this success slash accomplishment, and what can I take from this to incorporate for future journeys in terms of, how did I get through those rough patches? How did I take care of myself to get here? Which in turn lends itself to really recognizing what you need in terms of self-care rather than how a lot of people, and even I do this, is we tend to continue to grind until burnout because all we see is the one big goal at the finish line.
Yeah, we all kind of do that, right? You said, and we're going to talk about goal setting a little bit later, but sometimes if the mountain's pretty high, you're just so focused there, and you can get burnout if you don't slow down and acknowledge some small successes. Getting up a flight of stairs, I should know this math, but getting up a flight of stairs, it's either 10 or 12 steps, right? So every step is an accomplishment. You don't have to wait till you get to the whole flight to say you're doing something. So it's a reminder that we all kind of need. I've been told, Mirel, I've been waiting to talk to you about this one, this whole conversation actually all week, but I found out that the act of celebrating is actually very, very good for our brains. Celebrating successes releases endorphins like dopamine. What's your take on that? Tell us what that's all about.
I mean, definitely, it I can definitely understand why it would be good for our brains. I mean, you're essentially hyping yourself up for something that you accomplished, but I think it also really depends on how one chooses to celebrate. We hear the word celebrate and we envision usually like a party or some great outburst of energy, but that isn't always true. It should be tailored to how a person wants to effectively treat themselves to that accomplishment. So, such as allowing themselves the opportunity to grab dinner at a restaurant they've been putting off, or maybe play a video game that they haven't had time for. For a common thing I hear is the introvert will want a cup of wine and the extrovert will buy those tickets to the concert they wanted to see. You want to learn how to celebrate in a way that provides maintenance for yourself.
I love that, and it's probably not hard for you to assume I'm buying the tickets. I'm the extrovert. I could envision, sometimes for me celebrating might just be, as you said, something that you haven't had time for, just making time for that bike ride, right? Or,
Mhm.
a trip to an amusement park or something like that that you haven't yet made time for. So I think your point, figuring out what is the reward for you and what works for you and is healthy for you.
Oh, absolutely, yeah.
My next question, should we celebrate every single win?
This is a difficult one because I think it can get a little tricky. So I'm gonna say that I think we should, but we don't. And it depends a lot on how you were raised. So if you're humble, you might not make a big deal about it. If you're hard on yourself, you may see this accomplishment as something that should have been done sooner or better. Maybe you believe this was guaranteed and not really a challenge worthy of celebration. For others, they may see it as, I could have done this so easily. How are others not stepping up their game? So, a lot of this can be mitigated by educating on how celebration can be perceived in different ways. And again, is the way you're celebrating serving you in the way you need? So, yes, we can celebrate everyone. I think we just need to be a little bit cautious on how we do.
I love your answer, and I purposely didn't lead you in the answer because I have an opinion. I agree with you. We should celebrate every win, but and we'll get into this in a second. It can be a bit of a slippery slope. When I think about celebrating every win, I'm remembering raising my kids, and when they were little, schools decided to stop acknowledging the valedictorian
Mm,
because they didn't want the other kids to feel. And I always felt, well, but that one kid worked really hard. Shouldn't we?
mhm,
We gotta celebrate those. And I don't necessarily think, when you in sports. I'm a sports fan. At the time of this production, we're watching the NBA Finals. One team's got to win. It doesn't mean
mhm.
you got two great teams by the time you get to that level, but one team has to win. So I do believe in celebrating every win, but I know it's a tricky question. So I appreciate you wading into that. Beautifully done. Beautifully done. Can you, as we talk about celebrating every win, and this has been maybe today, this was my favorite question that I got to ask you. Can you differentiate between celebrating successes and bragging? I mean, the latter I find particularly aggravating especially on social media. So I'm wondering, you're an associate marriage and family therapist. Can you differentiate between celebrating successes and being braggadocious in what you've done?
Ah, so yes. Hearing that question, my immediate response is like, I think of when I sometimes see these people who are constantly celebrating themselves every day. My mindset can very much be like, good for you, I guess. Or I just overall have like this really bitter feeling of like, seriously, things cannot be this good for them. And something I've acknowledged is that a lot of it does depend on background. So if I know that person is rich or has some type of privilege, my irritation is greater than if I know that that person has struggled and I personally feel they deserve where they are now. And that's where that slippery slope is, I think, in terms of personally, is because that mentality is parallel to one's own self reflection. What makes me not deserving of celebration? Why do I feel like if I share my well earned accomplishments, it will be seen as bragging? And what keeps me from treating myself? And a lot of that could be expectation, right? So sometimes the reason we keep ourselves from doing that is, what are others going to expect from this? What will others expect from me to continue or do? And what do I truly feel I deserve? So I kind of, does that answer your question a
It
little bit?
does, yeah, it absolutely does. And I'll just a quick follow up to that, because when you talked about privilege and your reaction, I loved your reaction. I was glad I wasn't on camera because I started to laugh when you said it, because your reaction is the same as mine. Good for you. That's great. Oh my God, what a great, beautiful car. Or look at that big, ugly house or whatever. But I started to think, is there a difference between celebrating and then celebrating on social media? We've done a couple different videos on the effects of social media, this just occurred to me over the weekend. There's a difference. If I'm very proud of something I've done, I don't have to post that on social media. I can celebrate, get the dopamine in my head without doing that. Would you agree there? Bit of an aside.
No, yeah, absolutely. The I think where it starts getting to kind of where it's a little bit concerning is like, if you absolutely need that validation to start feeling good about what you're accomplishing, and you start doing it less about your own self-improvement or self-motivation or what you want, and it's more so, how do people pleasing, essentially.
Yeah,
So you're not serving yourself, you're doing things for these other individuals.
yeah,
And that's where I think social media can get really dangerous, because like, you're now trying to fabricate things without really processing how it's affecting you or others around you in the long term, because you just want to see, that upticks in likes, comments, or brand dealing, whatever that may be. So
yeah.
you're not serving yourself anymore.
Got it. Totally got it. Didn't even think about it as not serving self anymore. That's perfect. Perfect way to think about it. I'll think about that the next time I'm on Facebook and I scroll through some things that made me go, wow, okay.